we do indeed know that when we speak about the COVID-19, it has implications for health, something that will be touched upon today, I'm sure, but it also has implications for us as societies. And us, the so-called China scholars, people with a background in political science, in international relations, who do the part of regional studies, which is Asia-related, so for me it's China, are trying to make sense of what China thinks, of how China cooperates with the world, and this is a very good example and a case for analysis that I want to present to you today. So we do understand that when the virus first emerged, we did not see it as a global issue, and here there are two interpretations to this. First of all, if China reacted in a correct way, then this was just something that couldn't be avoided, or the second interpretation, China kept a lid on the situation, kept a lid on the information, and until it was too late. And right now, I want to talk to you about some of the reactions that China launched in response to this information about it in the aftermath of the initial outbreak in China. And I want to apply narrative theory to take a look at these examples, to kind of maybe analyze them a little bit in depth. And we want to look at how China is actively shaping these narratives about the COVID-19. And of course, the name of my presentation today is In Sickness and in Health, which means that we are all globally connected. Therefore, there are some very important lessons that can be drawn from the reactions of China and also from the virus, the spread of the virus itself. So, as I mentioned, we do understand that the biggest question isn't answered, whether China reacted correctly. When the virus first emerged in apparently November 2019, or even in late October, according to some reports, there were some doctors in the Chinese city of Wuhan, the city that right now has gained international recognition for all the wrong reasons. So, and these doctors said that this is an issue, this is something new, something that needs to be countered. Apparently, they were shut down and they were not listened to, and the information did not reach the highest levels of political management until it was too late. Therefore, the initial reaction was overdue. And when China did launch very all-encompassing measures to contain the virus, here's where the opinions differ. Was it too late or not? So, and I want to take a look at this example in a wider context of the rise of China. We have, and this is a discussion that we're all privy to. So what does an ever stronger, a rising China mean for the global community? Is it going to be a responsible stakeholder? Can China share the burden of global responsibility given its political system? There are some articles which are more scientific, more weighted, such as by one of my colleagues, Pu Xiaoyu, Professor Pu. There are some which are very scandalous and something that you probably heard, a book by Harvard-based Professor Graham Allison on the trap. Basically, he's basing his argument on the Peloponnesian War, right? That an existing superpower and a rising superpower cannot really coexist, and that there is a very big chance of a clash. So, regardless of where you stand on this debate, you have definitely heard this debate, right? So, what does a rising China really bring to the world? And I want to make an argument that in this case, because for China it is extremely important how it's being viewed, precisely for the reasons of the fact that the global perception is important for China because it is a rising power, so it wants to be seen as the good guy, wants to be seen as the positive character in this case. So in this case, COVID-19 plays a make or break role in the process of China's international positioning. So what I'm trying to say here is that China's international standing and its perception as a global stakeholder will be greatly influenced, and already is influenced, by the way of how its reaction to the virus is being perceived internationally. So the stakes are extremely high, is what I'm saying. So, and because of this basic argument, I'm saying that there will be more and more new, creative, complicated narrative-shaping techniques out there coming from China. And it is interesting to look at them, and it's interesting to recognize them. I have to say that some of this research has been also presented at the China and Europe Research Network conference a month or so ago in Lisbon, right before the travel ban. And some of it has been presented elsewhere, but this is, in such form, this is the first time. So let's talk about narrative theory and what is a narrative, because I keep throwing this word around, and let's kind of put a pin in it and understand it better. So, of course, it originates from the theory of literature. So when you analyze a story that the author tells, and you analyze that what kind of instruments does he imply to make the story compelling to the reader, to the listener? So what is the setting, what is the place, and what are the arguments the author uses? So that is the literature part of a narrative. In political science, when we talk about narrative analysis, we do it from a who gains perspective. So narrative in political science is a representation of reality from a particular perspective, from a perspective of the speaker, and the speaker is rearranging reality in a way that suits him. Okay, I understand the word reality itself is problematic. It depends on your ontological position, whether you believe in a reality that is not influenced by us, which is objective. But let's just, for the sake of the argument, play with this ontological position that indeed there is a reality. So it exists, and the narrative is how we talk about it. Of course, on a deeper human level, we understand that narrative building for us it's a survival mechanism. It's something so intrinsically human that is what makes us human indeed, telling stories. It is a mnemonic device that we apply to be able to remember events, because reality is so multi-layered, so complex, that we just cannot make sense of the world. So storytelling is something that we as a humanity have employed for millennia in order to increase our chances of survival and remember, indeed remember, the complex reality that is around us. And in that, we understand that a story that we're telling does not necessarily have to be true. It has to work for a purpose. And let us look into two scenarios, how the narrative on the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, how it could develop from a Chinese perspective. And when I'm saying best case scenario and worst case scenario, I mean from a Chinese perspective, right? From the perspective of the actor who is representing reality from his perspective. So best case scenario, the virus emerges, China reacts in a certain way, adapts policies, and then is being deemed as successful internationally, is being deemed as efficient, and the protocols that China implements are being copied globally. It's considered to be a good example. What does it mean in the context of China's rise that we just touched upon? It means that in this story, in this narrative, the virus is the villain. And China, as a country, as a political system, is on the right path. It's the message, right? So it's a trustworthy and responsible global stakeholder. It could deal with this big issue, and it could help the world. So that's the best case scenario. Now let's move to the worst case scenario. The virus emerges, China reacts B. And it is deemed as a failure on the international stage, which brings about global consequences. And China is not being perceived as a responsible stakeholder. It's not the virus that's the villain anymore, it is China. We've all heard how President Trump calls it the Chinese virus. So the big implications to this worst case scenario for China is that it is being seen as being on the wrong development path and a risk for the global community indeed. Why is it important for China, what the world thinks about it? Why is it important? Because right now, with China's rise, the perceptions really have the power to influence its standing in international organizations, such as the World Health Organization, such as the UN, and it can influence China's projects that are important to China. For example, Belt and Road Initiative. Very directly, the perception of China as not a trustworthy global partner influences directly the countries that have signed the Memorandum of Understanding of Belt and Road Initiative. And of course, it can also have a spillover effect into Chinese economic stability and, which is even worse for the Chinese government, Chinese political stability. Because that is the big issue here, right? That is the goal. Sometimes it's being said that the main task of the Communist Party of China is to ensure its own survival. I would argue that every system wants to ensure its survival, of course, but the main task is to maintain some kind of stability, some kind of political stability. At least that's also the message that they're sending, with any means necessary, as we know, including human rights violations. So, but how are we doing in terms of the balance of these two narratives, the worst case scenario and the best case scenario? Right now, there are several stories out there which do not help China at all. First of all, it was the delayed response that I just presented. Secondly, the crackdown on activists, the whistleblowers, also an example that I brought to you about Dr. Li Wenliang. And also some censorship, right? So that is not working for China. Also, the crisis brought about by COVID-19 has again sparked the discussion on the food safety issues in China. And also, in a more xenophobic way, sparked discussions about the eating habits of the Chinese. So, attacking the eating habits and saying that that is the issue. What is helping China as a best-case scenario in this narrative? First of all, China is capitalizing on the state-dispatched help to Italy, to Serbia, calls with 17+1 countries explaining the virus. Also, the reports that we've also been receiving on the efficiency of dealing with the crisis once it was out there, such as building hospitals in just a few days' time, such as ensuring supply management, keeping the supply chains running, which is, it is a big deal in a country of 1.3, 1.4 billion people. And also there is, amongst the liberals, in the liberal circles, there's also a very strong anti-racist sentiment, so kind of a reaction to these critiques of the Chinese eating habits or saying that there's something that was caused by China. But right now what we're seeing is that both of these narratives are kind of in a balance. So, sorry, not the narratives, but the perceptions. We see that it's not tilting either way. So what do we do? What does China do to be able to tilt the scale? Because like I already mentioned, the stakes are huge. And I want to show you some concrete examples of how China is trying to, in a novel way, to shape the narrative, to go back from very classic elements of, well, state information dissemination to more creative types of narrative shaping. The first is China has moved away greatly, decentralized from official content, from these dry press releases that we were seeing all over before, right? The plenum of the Communist Party that decided this and that. It moved very swiftly into people's reporting. So reposting the videos which demonstrate that the citizens are complying with the regulations and are supporting their country, such as this video, which was reposted by CGTN, the Chinese official TV for external use, showing how the Wuhanese are singing the national anthem while being in lockdown. So this is one. Produced official content, not so much anymore. Let's show how the people are liking this. The second trend of shifting the balance, shifting the narrative towards the best case scenario for China would be moving away from political content to human relatable experiences in the context of COVID-19. I believe many of us have seen this screenshot of this video. It is a story of a Chinese nurse who cannot even hug her own kid because she has to be in isolation because she's working 18 hours a day, and they're both crying. Her daughter, who's sending her air hugs from across the parking lot. So, an extremely relatable story from a narrative perspective, right? First of all, it's human. It's not about the political system. It's about a mother and a child in a hardship. Secondly, it's a medical worker. So, we are naturally inclined to feel very much support for doctors, and thank you, by the way, including you, future doctors, dear students. We're naturally inclined to feel a lot of support to people who have this mission. So this is relatable, whereas political content isn't. And a third example actually is from Latvia, closer to home. There has been a trend to de-emphasize the officials and the diplomats rather than showing their pictures, rather than interviewing people in suits, talking about how this is a global issue and that we're fighting it together, and even the picture. So you see two articles which were published a few weeks apart in different news outlets. The second one is from Delphi, I believe. So in the second article, the picture isn't even from China anymore, right? So it's a global problem. It's not specifically Chinese. The last strategy that I want to show you is, if the previous strategies were quite, it's fair game from a narrative analysis perspective, this is something you can do. Then this one is a little bit despicable in my opinion, but still it can work. It is about challenging the origins of the virus. So trying to turn the story around by saying, oh, the virus did not emerge in Wuhan. It is not about the Chinese people eating habits or food safety or lack of top-down information. So this is the spokesperson of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs saying that this is basically an American virus. Now, this is a very good example of how you try to challenge a story, right? And now, let's move to the lessons brought to us, right, because that is what we promised you, that this was going to be something that we can learn about China and the world. So first of all, we see that there is a major design flaw in the Chinese political system, which is a lack of good information exchange channels. Basically, there is no valve for whistleblowers internally. There's nowhere they can turn to when they see that there's an issue, because your direct management will most likely not want to give the story any traction because it's an issue. Everybody's job is on the line, so to speak. So, and now we see that this system design flaw has a tendency to influence not just China internally, but also can spread across international borders. And the question remains whether this design flaw is intrinsic in the party-state system, or is it something that China will try to manage in the future? However, it is a flaw. Secondly, we have learned that a very big task, an undertaking that the Chinese Communist Party has been undertaking for 15 years to bring people together, to create social solidarity from, top down, has been inefficient. So these ways how to do it were very different, starting from capitalizing on Chinese traditional values, turning to other means found in socialism. But what was demonstrated is that social solidarity in Wuhan did not emerge in support of the Communist Party. It emerged to challenge the party. That is why when Xi Jinping was preparing for his visit to Wuhan, prior to that, the Wuhanese were asked to thank the party, thank the government. Most people did not want that, so this did not gain any traction. It was not a people's war against the virus. There was a lot of public outcry against the government. And the third big lesson of COVID-19 is that in China, with every minute, the stakes of global opinion are higher and higher, which means they will be shaping narratives more creatively. Sorry if this kind of seems like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I know I started with this. Let's look at the world, though. First of all, and this is a good news. How am I doing on time? Okay, thank you. So, first of all, that is very good news. Regardless of the system, regardless of the government, regardless of religion, we have realized that when it comes to a truly challenging situation, to a threat, most governments actually agree on measure policies. Having said that, we understand that, of course, the implementation has been different. You know, we have the unfortunate example of the UK. We have, you know, untrustworthiness of the government of Iran. But still, the idea that people should stay at home, wash their hands, and socially distance has been taken and adapted by pretty much everyone. So, in the face of big challenges, we can actually agree on something. The second big lesson that COVID-19 has taught us and is going to continue to teach us is that no-contact economy is not a state of emergency. No-contact economy is the new reality that we will be living in. It is going to be a protocol that we can launch and set in motion when any major threat arises, and it will arise again, we're pretty sure of that. So businesses better be ready. Just like RSU, due to extensive investments in digital infrastructure, is ready for this conference today and is at the forefront of the no-contact economy, also by investing in people's mindsets. So, of course, I understand that there are some industries that simply cannot operate in a no-contact economy. And I want to make something clear. No-contact economy does not equal online economy. Of course, internet is a big facilitator for the no-contact economy. However, there were very low-tech solutions for no-contact economy as well. Medicine of the beginning of the 20th century is proof to that, right? So, obviously, one of these industries that cannot really operate in a no-contact economy is tourism and hospitality. But maybe, just maybe, we already kind of knew that mass tourism was unsustainable. And not just for the reasons of virus spreading, but also for environmental reasons. So maybe this means the end of cheap, affordable mass tourism. We're going to have to pay more for the hotel rooms that we will be staying in, because we will be paying for the day that we're there and also for the day when this room stays empty due to no contact requirements. Another very clear example, another very clear lesson of the virus is that the more trustworthy the institutions in a country or in a society, the more resilient and panic-free communities we get. In a country where you're not sure whether your government is lying to you or not about the virus, you're prone to fake news, you're prone to hoarding behavior, not because you're a bad person, but because you just want to make sure that nothing happens to you and to your loved ones. So let's keep investing in trustworthy institutions, and that will make us as communities better. And to go back to the name of this talk, and this is a funny one because we are all bound together in sickness and in health. That means that the governments that we disagree with, we living in liberal democracies, there are governments that we disagree with, such as China, such as Iran, but we will be forced to share information. And not just any information, but critical, classified information. And what does that mean? That means that narratives will be shaped much more creatively, not just by these governments, but also we have to work on it. What does it mean? It means that social sciences and political science in general can help us with these issues, can help us with these new challenges, and it matters. So thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here today at a conference where health and social sciences meet. Let's work together for a better future. Thank you very much.